This is Ron Palou with NetSmart Technologies, and I welcome you to AIRS Basics. In this online video tutorial, you will learn how to look up an existing client, enter an agency intake, look up a service encounter, and enter a service encounter. Let's get started. Looking up an existing client. To look up an existing client in AIRS, we would go into the Clients and Services module. And here we see over on the left-hand side this little pair of binoculars through which we can click Find Client. AIRS allows us to look up our clients a few different ways. We can look them up by last name, first name, date of birth. We can also look them up by the client ID, social security number, insurance, or legal case number. Here in the search, we can enter as much information as we know about the client. We can enter, for example, the first letter of the client's last name. Click Search. And here it shows us all of our clients whose last names start with the letter B. All of our active clients would display here in the list in black. Any incomplete intakes would be displayed in blue. Any inactive clients would be displayed in red. And anyone who's in the system as a collateral only would be displayed in green. Once the names are displayed in the list, you can also take your mouse, and if you right-click over the client's name, you'll see up will pop this box that says View Details. If we then left-click on View Details, you'll see that this information box is displayed, giving us a little bit more information as a preview to the client. Here we can see the intake date, date of birth, contact information, just a little bit more information that we can review to see if in fact that was the client that we were intending to work with. Following, we can click on the little red box to close, and to select a client we can either double click over their name or we can highlight and click Select. Once a client is selected, you will see their name up at the top of the screen. Also down at the bottom in the lower left-hand corner, you'll see that preview. And if we take our mouse and bring it over to the left-hand side menu and right-click, we'll see the options to expand all or collapse all. So if we click Expand All, here we can see all the different sections of client information and services. Starting at the top, we have intake information, enrollments and assignments, historical information. Scrolling down, we then have the hepatitis section, the assessments, and the services. Entering an agency intake. To enter a new agency intake or a new client into the system, we would highlight agency intake over here on the left-hand side, and then we would click Add up at the top. AIRS does require us to do one search of the client database by first name and last name to hopefully prevent us from entering a duplicate client into the system. So here, I enter a first name and last name, click Begin. The system is telling me I already have a client by the name of James Bond in the system. Here you're able to review the date of birth, social security number, Medicaid number if entered. Hopefully determining those pieces of information, we can determine whether or not this is an existing client, and we'd want to then close out of this screen and go back into Find Client, or if it is an other person that just happens to have the same name as an existing client, we can click New Person down here at the bottom and proceed with the agency intake. So we can go starting with the intake date. If I click intake date, here up will pop the calendar view, so I can select my intake date from the calendar. And then using the tab key, we can then navigate through the identification tab. As throughout the application, all the bolded fields are the required fields in order to save. Here on the Identification tab, that includes client ID, gender, primary language, date of birth, housing. Those fields, of course, that are also found here on the Identification tab may not be required to save, but they may be a requirement of your contract. So a good example would be down in the lower right-hand corner, household size and total annual household income. These are required questions for all agencies with Ryan White contracts. Once we complete all the required fields on the Identification tab, we can then navigate over to the More Details tab. So if I click here where it says More Details, here you'll see we have questions related to ethnicity and race, insurance, and also required down at the bottom you'll see the referral source as well as the type of referral source. Once we have completed all of the questions under the More Details tab, we can then navigate over to Other Information. So here we could answer questions related to substance use, income sources benefits, and special populations. So here we can identify substances by checking them off here in the pick list. Additionally, we can identify if the client is currently abstaining from substance use or if there is no substance use to report. Coming down to income sources benefits, here we can right-click, add income sources, select a income source from the pick list, click on Done. Special populations down here at the bottom of the screen. Again, when the cursor changes to a little hand, that would be an indication to right-click. And here we have Select Special Populations. Over here on the left-hand side, we have all of those special populations as defined by the CDC. So to select, we can simply highlight, use the arrows to select special populations. Additionally, we can also double-click. You'll see that will bring the item under Selected Special Populations. Then we can click on Done. Moving on to the Enrollment tab, we'll see that date intake entered that will always default to the current day. Person completing intake, we can select our intake worker. Automatically, the client assigned to site will populate based on the worker's assignment. We can enter the program performing intake. You'll see this little box, enroll this client into the program performing intake. So by leaving that box checked, AIRS will automatically create a program enrollment for this client into the selected program. Next, we can move on to HIV status and the HIV/AIDS risk history. To enter HIV status, we would right-click over the box. Up will pop Add HIV Status. We can then go through and enter the client's status at agency intake. So maybe they're coming into our agency for testing and they do not know their status. We can put their status in as unknown, unreported. And click on Done. To enter the HIV/AIDS risk history, similarly, we would right-click over the box, click on Add HIV Risk History, and that brings us to our HIV risk screen. And we have our three tabs going across: Factors, Risk in the last 12 months, and Characteristics. So it's very important to make sure that we go through all three tabs prior to clicking Done at the bottom. So we can go through our questions related to both sexual risk factors and non-sexual risk factors. Questions related to risk in the last 12 months. And characteristics. For our female clients, we have questions related to pregnancy. And then for everyone, we have questions related to previous HIV testing. For those clients that self-report yes, we will need to enter the month and year, as well as what the client's self-reported test results were. Once we've gone through those questions related to self-reported test results, whether or not the client is in HIV medical care, we can then click Done at the bottom. At this point, if we've gone through all the required questions of the agency intake, we can then click on Save. Upon clicking on Save, should validation problems be identified, up will pop this box. And in the lower left-hand corner, here it will tell me where we have a problem. So here it's saying, click to view validation errors, insurance status must be entered. We can then click OK. If I navigate over to the More Details tab, here it shows us what we missed is in red. So here we see insurance status is red. We can then check off the appropriate insurance status. And now if I click on Save, up will pop this box of program enrollment was made for this client into the program that was selected. And then it says you should assign a worker for this program enrollment. It's not required agency intake, but you should go in and do that at some point. And then we can click OK. Once we see the client's name up at the top and also down in the information box in the lower left-hand corner, we know that our agency intake has saved. Now that we've saved our agency intake, we can make updates to enrollments and assignments, updates to historical information, or also updates to encounters and services. If we need to make updates to program enrollments, we would go into Program Enrollments, click on Add up at the top, select our program, select the date, and assign a worker. So here we would right-click to Add Worker Assignments, enter the staff, and the time. Once that information is entered, we would then click Save at the top. Similarly, to make updates to historical information, let's say we're going to make updates to the housing status. We would click on Add, enter the effective date, enter the housing status, and click on Save. At any point, should we need to change a record, we would simply click on Edit, make the necessary update, and click Save. Should a record be in error, we can remove that record by clicking on Remove at the top. Here it gives us a warning. Are you sure you want to remove this record? Click on Yes, and the record is now removed. Looking up a service encounter. To look up an existing encounter, we would simply click on the little manila envelope here that says Find Existing Encounter. Here, AIRS would allow us to do a search by date, program, staff, or any combination of those fields. Additionally, you can click Nothing at all and just click Search, and it will pull up the full history. And then to select, we would simply highlight and double-click, or highlight and click Select at the bottom. And here we see the service encounter information. We have the date, program, service category, the encounter type, staff person, services provided. Entering a service encounter. To enter a new service encounter, you would start by clicking on Add. First, select the date. Next, we would select the funding program. So since this is a case management program, automatically case management is entered for our service category. Go through, select our encounter, staff person. Automatically the site will default to the workers assigned to site. That certainly can be updated if necessary. Moving through, we can see team, location, encounter with, prevention related information, has the session number, incentive provided, number of male condoms, number of female condoms, if any of those are applicable. And then we can come down to services provided. If we needed to enter an additional service provided, we can right-click again over the box, select Service Provided, and go through those same steps. And here we get a message. The encounter start and end times were adjusted based on the service times entered. The new encounter time is specified here in the message. So AIRS will add the service times together to give you the overall encounter time. To document any referrals that were made as a part of the service encounter, here under Referrals Provided, we can right-click, Add Referrals Provided, and then enter our referral information. So starting with the category, go through, enter the service, and then here under referral information we could identify if it was an on-site referral. Otherwise we could select an entry from our referral library. And then also bolded fields is the follow-up method. So here we have a choice, active referral, passive referral with agency verification, and passive referral with client verification. So we would select the appropriate follow-up method, click on Done, and here we see referral provided. Now that all of our required fields for our service encounter have been completed, we can click Save up at the top and save our encounter. So once you see the encounter listed here in blue with the date, we know that the encounter has been saved. If we go into Find Existing Encounter, we'll see that is now displayed here for us as well. This concludes the AIRS Basics online video tutorial. Please visit www.airsny.org for other online tutorials, user references, and the latest updates about all things AIRS.